Hello, everyone. Welcome to season 2 of Understanding People. My name is Kirsten Miller-Doberman, and I am going to be your host for every episode this season. If you missed season 1, you can go back to Get Abstract's YouTube channel or the journal, and you can find all the episodes that we did with season 1. We're gearing up now for season 2, beginning in 2021. In the first season, we looked at all kinds of communication styles in an effort to try to understand ourselves better, as well as understand others better, so that in both our personal and our professional lives, we can work from a place of understanding each other so we can connect better and grow both at work and at home. And in season 2, we wanted to kind of put all of that learning into the context that we're all presently living in, working from home, dealing with the challenges of the pandemic, and all kinds of uncertainties that have kind of been bubbling up into both work and life atmosphere over the last year. So each episode is going to be how to manage ... how to manage something. And it can be something at work, something at home, how to manage your time, how to manage stressors, how to manage a difficult meeting, how to manage a negotiation. So we can offer really practical tools to you wherever you are, whether you're sitting at home at your laptop or you're out there fighting Corona as a first responder, or you're a student, wherever you may be in life, that you can gain some really practical tools. And of course, we're making wide use of our incredible authors and experts at Get Abstract to offer you those practical tools. And hopefully it's something that you can take on and you can share with colleagues, friends, or family in a way that's helpful to them. So without further ado, we're going to launch into episode 1 of season 2, and we're going to talk about how to manage negativity. And I'm inviting Michael Lee Stallard on to join us for this conversation. Before I read your bio, I just want to say welcome, Michael. Great to see you. You've been patiently waiting down there while I've been talking away.
Hi, Kirsten. Great to be with you.
Yeah, so first of all, to let you all know a little bit about Michael, he is an author, a keynote speaker, and a workshop leader on how leaders create and maintain cultures of connection that help individuals, teams, and organizations thrive for a sustained period of time. He is co-founder and president of Connection Culture Group, which is a leadership, training, and consulting firm. Michael's recent clients have included Costco, the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, Turner Construction, Qualcomm, US Air Force, and Yale New Haven Health. So a wide variety of different organizations. Michael is the primary author of Connection Culture, which is now in its 2nd edition, which was just released in September, updated for all of the challenges of COVID. And he's also the author of Fired Up or Burned Out. Michael recently launched also a very popular online course with LinkedIn Learning, which is titled Creating a Connection Culture. So if you are a LinkedIn member, that course is free. We'll let him talk about that a little bit more later. So that's a little bit about Michael. So, Mr. Stallard, I had the honor of talking with you at the beginning of the pandemic, almost a year ago, in the spring of 2020. Now we're back. Let's be honest, 2020 was a hard year for a lot of people. But I want to talk with you about how to channel maybe some of that negativity that came up into something positive. So first of all, you're a leadership trainer and a coach. How have you seen negativity kind of seep into work and home life, and in ways that perhaps people don't realize? And why is that so dangerous?
Well, Kirsten, I'm glad that you said ways that people don't realize, because there's a lot of depth in that phrase. And what we're seeing right now is a convergence of 3 factors, really worldwide. That number one, loneliness was high going into the pandemic. You know, just in the modern era, people have been so focused on tasks and I think just globalization, and work has crowded out time for relationships in many countries, probably especially in the US where I live, not far from New York City. And so we have the loneliness epidemic. It's become worse during the pandemic because of rising social isolation to prevent the transmission of the virus. Yeah. And then thirdly, we have high levels of stress. We just see people are worried about contracting COVID. They have economic concerns, just the uncertain economic environment here in the US and other countries as well. You just have a political divisiveness and concern about the future of their country. We do see in the research that uh, parents who have children who are learning remotely are extremely stressed. People of color are extremely stressed. So that combination means stress, loneliness, social isolation means many people their body is going to view it as a threat. It's going to put their body in a state called stress response where they don't feel well. And one of the research clearly shows when this combination is even just loneliness on its own often triggers people feeling threatened and helpless, and that can produce negativity. So just with the way you said that, things that people may not be aware of, if they're not having this need for connection met, we're hardwired to connect as human beings. When that need isn't met, and it's harder in this environment, then it's going to produce that, feeling threatened and helpless will produce a negativity. And then I think it's exacerbated often these days because we have many media outlets, both online and in the traditional media, they're using fear to drive high volumes of viewership. And there's an economic model that, unfortunately, it works, right? It does drive viewership and revenue for them, but it's triggering even greater fear that people have, and that can make them negative. So these are some unseen forces, or I would say forces that a lot of people are not aware of. But when you understand biology and how environment affects our biology, it makes more sense why we're seeing greater negativism and even greater hostility in society, like the break into the Capitol that we saw here recently in the US.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and last season, actually, we had a neuroscientist on, and she talked about how, like, the raising of chemicals in the brain, like adrenaline and cortisol. And so there actually is a biological, it's not just, oh, I feel down today. There
Mhm.
are threats that come in that raise hormone levels in the body. So there is a physiological response. And if we
There
stay
is.
at that elevated stress level for too long, it produces so many adverse effects. Before we talk about how we can connect with others, even in this time of isolation, as you mentioned, I want to talk about how do we protect ourselves then in an environment where it just feels like negativity is swirling around, whether it's what media we consume
Mhm.
or whether it's a toxic work culture. Because when people feel threatened, obviously, then that affects the way that they do their job. And sometimes we might be trying to bring in a positive attitude or focus on things that we're grateful for, but we feel like we're working with a team that it's just like so negative all the time. How do we protect our own mind and heart in those situations?
Well, it's important to take a holistic view. We there, you number one, there isn't just a single thing that you can do that can protect you. The one thing that has the greatest positive impact is connection, just relational connection for several reasons. One being when we get in a conversation, it engages the cortex of our brain where we make rational decisions, and it disengages the amygdala where we process threats. So the effect of that is twofold. Number one, because the cortex is engaged, we make better decisions, we're more rational, and because the amygdala is disengaged, it calms our nervous system so we feel better. So
Mm,
that's the one thing we can do. But let me just step back from that and say it's more complicated. And one of the things that we do when we're coaching individuals or in workshops is we use illustration of Atlas. Do you remember from Greek mythology, Atlas is
yeah.
condemned to hold up the weight of the heavens, right? He's holding up this
Yeah.
world and he's straining. And, there's a Atlas in Midtown Manhattan in
Yeah.
Rockefeller Center where he's a really buff Atlas. He has huge thighs. And, that's the kind of Atlas we want to be because he can hold up the weight of the heavens. So what we do is we have people just, describe the weight of the heavens. We have them write down their stressors. So we
Mm,
capture that. What are all the things that are causing stress in their life? And then we use Atlas's legs. One is connection, and we have them write down who are the people who have your back, who you process life with, who energize you when you're with them. And then secondly, what are the other leg is resilience factors. So are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating a healthy diet? Are you taking at least a day off a week where you're just totally getting away from work and doing things that energize you? Hopefully more than that, than one day, but at least one day. And then it may be gratitude or prayer and meditation, things like that. I was in a workshop recently where someone said, I get massages, and that, that makes me feel more resilient. Yes.
And
And
I
that's
highly
never thought
recommend
before.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah.
So there are all these, you have to look at it from a systemic standpoint. And the other thing to keep in mind is that connection is a factor that when you don't have your need for connection met, the pain of stress is greater. And it undermines, and science shows this, peer-reviewed studies show that when we don't have our need for connection met, it undermines our willpower to eat healthy, to exercise, and it disrupts our sleep. So the lack of connection really sabotages the whole system.
Wow. Okay. So that totally makes sense. And I can back all of that up. And it's kind of like an accountability factor when you're around other people, not like you are accountable verbally to others, like saying, hey, I ate healthy today.
Mhm.
But just being around other people motivates those good behaviors. But what do you do when you're forced to work with negative people? I just want to come back. I want to get your thoughts on this because I know I've been in those situations. I know people that are listening to have been this before. When you are the someone who's like, all right, I got my two Atlas legs. I'm doing my building up my resilience factors. I'm connecting with the people who have my back, but I'm forced to maybe work with people who are really in their own spiral of negativity. How would you try to help them? Would you let them do their thing? How do we stay resilient when we're forced to maybe work with people in a team who are struggling? I guess you could say it's probably a better way to put it.
Well, there are several things to think about. Number one, with that negative individual, it could be that they're lonely and they're
Yeah.
fearful and they're in a state of stress response. If it seems like they're isolating and pulling away, then, reach out to them and
Mm,
ask them open-ended questions to see how they're doing. Just the fact that you show you care and you start to get them talking about concerns they have, that will, like I said earlier, it'll calm their nerves and it'll help them make better decisions. So, if it's your boss, that's tricky, right?
yeah.
You can
Well,
get
yeah.
them to share some, because that there are a lot of bosses that are not great out there.
Hey boss, tell me how you're feeling today. I can imagine
Yeah,
that conversation is going to go really well. But
yeah.
actually that leads me to ask you, that's probably like a really good strategy for leaders as well, if they sense that there's growing negativity among the people that they manage. I know you talk a lot about and are a big proponent of empathy, and sorry to shameless plug again, but we did an episode on empathy in the first season again, if you want to go watch it. But how does a leader show empathy if he senses that negativity seems to be taking over some projects or conversations? How would a leader step into that situation and really show empathy or concern?
Well, I would say it's broader than empathy, but let me just address empathy
Yeah.
first. So number one, getting people to express what their concerns are. If they're showing fear or they're feeling overwhelmed, step one is really getting them to identify and get them talking. Number one, to find out what's on their mind. What are they? It's some mindset that they have that they're probably ruminating on and maybe over worrying about, or it may be a legitimate issue that needs to be addressed. So get them talking about it. And as a leader, it'll do two things. Number one, it'll give them a voice. It'll show you value them. It will make them feel more connected to you. It'll calm their nerves. It'll help them make better decisions. And it'll also, in the end, they'll be more engaged. They'll be more aligned with where the team wants to go. So, step one is showing you value them and give them a voice. That's step one. Just in a broader sense, you want to create this culture of connection. We boil it down to communicating an inspiring vision that unites people, valuing people as individuals, and not treating them just as means to an end, and giving them a voice to express their ideas and opinions, and considering them when possible. Sometimes there are emergency situations where you don't have time. You have to make a decision and move. But when you can, it really pays huge dividends to give people a voice. You make better decisions, they feel more engaged.
I love that. So good. And so many great tools that you've offered. I want to encourage people to, of course, check out the abstract of your second edition on getabstract.com, Connection Culture, and also to buy the book and read the whole thing, and to reach out to you. Before I ask you my last question, I want to ask you a little bit about your LinkedIn course. Tell us a little bit
Mhm.
about that, how people can find it, and what you're doing there, because I know it's one of those things that if
Mhm.
people are learning how to manage negativity, that's probably something that would also be a great resource for them.
Well, with our travel stopped as soon as the pandemic started, we had a bunch of things scheduled. Everything stopped. And so we decided, okay, how can we use the time well? We were already working on the second edition of our book, Connection Culture. So our publisher, we agreed with them that we would take some additional time to factor in the pandemic and greater remote work. And so we had time to do that, which we were thrilled that we were able to do that. And then secondly, with not being able to travel, we couldn't go to California to film with LinkedIn, but the team at LinkedIn Learning was amazing. They shipped us all this equipment. We had a phenomenal producer and director and production team, and we're
Cool.
really pleased. It's an hour-long course. So it's not, they view it as an intermediate course. It's, there's so much depth in this topic of connection,
Yeah.
but it's a good introduction to connection culture. And so we're really excited about it. And
Okay.
just another thing to mention right now during the pandemic, just a couple things that are really helpful for people to think about is, and to put into place is number one, we can't give what we don't have. And if leaders don't take care of themselves, they're if they don't get enough sleep, if they don't get some exercise, if they don't eat healthy, they're not going to feel well. And that's going to produce negativity and bad moods. And they're not going to be good at connecting with people when you're in that mood.
Yeah.
Usually you're
Yeah.
more likely to snap. And research shows you do snap. You have a more intense reaction when you're lonely and not feeling well. And so, taking care of ourselves is really important. Make sure we get enough connection, and then we can help others. We can connect with them. And secondly, never worry alone. It's important that we don't ruminate on things, but we find someone to just process our thoughts with. And that helps bring out our best decisions when we do that. It makes us feel better too, makes us more resilient. And then finally, just being intentional about helping others and serving others. Serving others produces helpers high, which is a
Mm.
positive emotion that makes us more resilient. And so serving others through our work, the people we're responsible for leading, when we value them as individuals, when we give them a voice, that's a way of serving them. They feel better, they're more energized. It protects them from the negative effects of loneliness and stress that we talked about earlier, and it affects their performance in positive ways. So during this time, those things are really important. Taking care of ourselves, never worrying alone, and looking for ways to serve others. Those things will help. Those are the people who thrive through the pandemic. They're going to have that in common. And they'll also have some focus. They won't try to do everything. You can be overambitious in an environment like this, but we have less energy, Kirsten, during this pandemic because our brain senses that the environment has changed. So we're using more energy because of that. And
Yeah.
so if we focus on, say, 3 to 5 priorities and do those well, we're going to look back and say, that was time well spent. We actually, we didn't burn everyone out, and we accomplished some really good things. And so it's doable. The people who thrive through the pandemic, they're going to have those things in common.
Mm. I love that. Such wise and practical tools to end with. Thank you for laying them out so clearly. Um, my last question, just really easy for you before we let you go, is what are you optimistic about right now?
Well, as I say in the book, I write in the book, I am really optimistic because, when you go back and look historically, times of catastrophe, I'm thinking back to like the cholera epidemic of 1832, the Chicago's
Mm.
Great Fire of 1871, the 1911 Triangle
Oh,
Shirtwaist
trying to.
Factory fire in New York City. All these things, they were horrific in terms of at the time what happened. However, they produced changes. The Great Chicago Fire led to innovations in building materials that led to an urban boom.
Mm.
The cholera epidemic led to changes in public health and vast improvements in life expectancy that really came as a result of that. the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in
Mm,
Manhattan led to changes in protection for employees, not lower reasonable work hours for employees. It really great things came out of that. So I think coming out of this pandemic, we're going to see a greater appreciation for connection. When you understand biology and science, which I get into in the book, and we have all these great examples of people from around the world, leaders who cultivated connection cultures, but connection is a superpower. It makes us smarter, happier, and more
mm,
productive. It
yeah.
makes organizations, the people in the organizations have a cognitive advantage. There's greater employee engagement, better strategic alignment, greater innovation, greater agility. So I really think we could see somewhat of a boom post the epidemic as people appreciate connection more. That's my hope.
I'm very optimistic about that too, actually. I think that, and all of this, I mean, I'm so grateful for technology in so many ways because it allows us to do this interview and for, great content to be shared all over the world. But at the same time, us being forced to do so much more from our screens and from our laptops or computers, where whatever setup you have, has forced us to just really realize the benefit of
Mm.
connection and collaboration with other human beings. And I think that we're going to all move forward from this with that a little bit more front of mind when it comes to arranging our priorities, both at work and at home.
I believe that too.
So, Michael, thank you so much for your time, for your great work on this topic, your research, and for serving us all by helping encourage and motivate us to stay connected and to stay positive above all, even though it's crazy out there, to build both connection and resilience so we can persevere. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Yeah. And thank all of you so much for watching. We've reached the end of our first episode. Many more to come. Again, if you want to watch some of our previous episodes, season 1 of Understanding People, you can do that at our Get Abstract YouTube channel or on the journal, getabstract.com. Lots of different ways to watch, to share as well. Also available on all of our social pages. And while you're on LinkedIn, check out Michael Stallard's LinkedIn Learning course. So thank all of you for watching. Wishing you a wonderful rest of your day and week, wherever you may be. Stay tuned for the next episode. We'll see you very soon. Bye, everyone.